Hello everyone, my name is Kelly Johnson and I'm a Curriculum Officer at NCFE. My background is vocational education and I have 15 years of experience of working in the FE sector in various roles including a teacher, a curriculum leader and a curriculum operations manager. I've educated young people from level 1 to foundation degree including A-levels. My role is to support centres through the planning, onboarding and CPD processes for NCFE and cash qualifications, but in particular the BCert qualifications, with a focus on promoting and advancing learning. You're very welcome to this webinar, and in today's session we will examine the external assessment preparation and revision strategies in the subject area of performance skills. The plan for this webinar is to firstly provide you with an overview of the external assessment, including the assessment objectives and weighting, the types of questions and grading. I'll describe the external assessment regulations, including the timetable, specific instructions, and the process that is available for access arrangements and special considerations. I'll then explain the resources and support that is available to you in your centre. I'll also explain some of the revision strategies and tools that are available, but by all means, this is not an exhaustive list. Lastly, there will be an opportunity if we do get a chance to share strategies that you use and ask any further questions. We will answer them if we do have time, but if not, they will be taken away and answered in a timely manner after the webinar. Before I go through the external assessment overview, I'd just like to do a quick poll on how confident you're currently feeling with the preparation and revision for the external assessment, with 1 being no to little confidence and 10 being very confident. Okay, the responses are coming in and they're very interesting. We've got quite a differing range of people at different stages. So I think we've got all the votes that we're going to get at this point. So if I just close that poll off and I'll share the results. And you can see, like I said, that we've got half that are around 3 to 4% and another 50% between 7 and 8. Now, it was my expectation that for the first question that you'd all be at different stages in relation to your confidence levels. And I do hope by the end of this webinar that you are feeling more knowledgeable and confident about preparing for the external assessment for performance skills. So first, I'd like to take a closer look at Unit 1, which is the external assessment. But what I'd like to do first is just give you a little bit of information about our approach to awarding for the external assessment for this academic year, so 21-22. Now, the technical award qualifications usually have an external assessment that must be sat on a set date and time and at your centre. External assessments will go ahead this academic year unless public health measures deteriorate, in which case this will be reviewed by the government. Previously, where assessments were timetabled for a set date and time, we have updated our assessment variation process to allow centres to use additional test centre locations. Where possible, we have now implemented further adaptations and include an added additional assessment opportunity to support learners. So in the 2021 to 2022 academic year, learners will be permitted up to 2 retake opportunities for the external assessment for all the technical awards. So they will have an external assessment opportunity in each exam series. So that is in autumn, which is November, spring, which is in March, and then the additional window in the summer. And this date will be confirmed in the external assessment timetable. Furthermore, the provision of advanced notification of test topics where possible. This will support with preparation for the assessment and allow centres to manage the impact of learning loss in the assessment preparation. Please note though, we are actually still waiting for confirmation of these details from Ofqual and the DFE on whether this adaptation can be implemented or not. So please do keep your eye out for our customer newsletter where the details will be confirmed hopefully by the end of this week. Assessment opportunities where learners have received results based on teacher assessed grades or tags and centre assessed grades or CAGs do not count towards these retake opportunities. For further information, please do see our updated external assessment timetable guide, which is available on our website via the link on the screen. So the external assessment will be in the form of a written external examination, which will assess the learner's knowledge and understanding of content from Unit 1. The Level 1/2 Technical Award in Performance Skills covers 5 assessment objectives. The first 3 are about using and demonstrating knowledge and understanding, and it is these that will be in the external assessment. A variety of assessment styles will be used, including multiple choice, short answer, and extended response questions. This will enable learners to demonstrate their breadth of knowledge and understanding of the subject and ensure achievement at the appropriate level, including stretch and challenge. Questions will be written in plain English and in a way that is supportive and accessible to all learners of all abilities. As far as possible, real-world scenarios and contexts which are relevant to the sector will be used. And this is to engage and stimulate learners under examination conditions and to facilitate the drawing out of a wide range of knowledge and skills which they have developed throughout their learning. All questions will be compulsory, with available marks being clearly identified. And the written external assessment has been carefully constructed following a rigorous quality control process to ensure that the assessment is valid. Unit 1 has 48 guided learning hours and the external assessment lasts an hour and a half. It has a total of 80 marks and there are usually assessment opportunities in November and March of each year. And the reason for this is because usually there is only one resit opportunity available. Whichever external assessment they perform better in is the grade that counts towards their final grade. You will need to ensure that your learners are registered on the qualification before they can be booked onto the external assessment. The external assessment timetable contains key information such as the date and the time of the external assessment and the expected results release date. It will also tell you the cut-off for booking your learners for the external assessment, and this is usually around 2 weeks before the actual external assessment date. Please note there is a late fee that can be incurred if learners are registered late. As I've already mentioned in a previous slide, for 21-22, learners will be permitted up to 2 retake opportunities for the external assessment for all our technical award qualifications, and we have added additional assessment opportunities, and the dates of these will be confirmed in the external assessment timetable. For performance skills, 45% of the marks in the external assessment are for recalling and showing knowledge and understanding, whereas the higher order thinking of analysis and evaluation will account for 25% of the marks. This allows the assessments to cover both level 1 and level 2 learners. And again, the style of questions will be a mix of short answer, multiple choice, and longer response answers. There are 3 main types of questions on the external assessment, and where possible, as I've already said, they have been set within a performance skills context with real-world scenarios. The first type of question is multiple choice, and they are usually worth 1 or 2 marks. Multiple choice questions cover assessment objective 1, like this one from performance skills and on identifying one expressive skill. The second type of question is short answer, and they are usually around 4 marks. Short answer questions, such as this example, ask learners to explain 2 responsibilities a singer could have to make sure that rehearsals go smoothly. And the third type of question is extended response. Extended response questions are usually worth 6 marks or more. And this example is a 9-mark question and asks the learner to evaluate the potential costs and funding sources for a tour. The look of the external assessment paper will contain the learner instructions and learner information. Also, how many marks the question is worth, so 4 marks in this case. They are written in plain English as much as possible to ensure it's accessible by all learners. Bolding is used to highlight important aspects such as command verbs and other key words, like this example where to other is bolded, and in this case with 2 separate responses, each independently worth 1 mark each. Key or command words are used in terms of question structure and expectation. So for example, identify would be a single word or a short response, typically worth 1 mark. Describe is a short answer response, typically worth 1 or 2 marks. And explain would be a response with expansion, so typically worth 2 marks, and so on. For the extended response questions, the marking is laid out in bandings or levels. In each banding, the learners need to demonstrate all 3 of the assessment objectives to be successful. So Band 1 needs assessment objective 1, 2 and 3. Band 2 needs assessment objective 1, 2 and 3 as well, but in more detail. And Band 3 is the highest level, so the assessment objectives must be strongly demonstrated. On this slide is a generic example, and if this was a 9-mark question, then Level 1 or Band 1 would be worth 1 to 3 marks. Level 2 or Band 2 would be 4 to 6 marks, and Level 3 or Band 3 would be 7 to 9 marks. In Band 1 for Assessment Objective 1, learners must recall and communicate basic knowledge and understanding of performance and production principles, and the subject-specific terminology would be basic and inconsistent. Whereas in Band 3 for Assessment Objective 1, learners must recall and communicate a comprehensive knowledge and understanding of performance and production principles, and also where subject-specific terminology is used accurately and consistently throughout the project. The same principle is applied for each assessment objective and the banding that can be given to determine the marks that are awarded. It is worth noting here that learners may achieve in different bands against each assessment objective independently, and the banded mark scheme allows for differentiation of marks in this respect by positively applying creditable responses. Next, I'm going to take a look at the grading of the external assessment. The uniform mark scale is a method used to standardise the marking of papers across multiple external assessment windows by converting a raw mark out of 80 into a UMS score. The final grade in the external assessment is determined by converting the raw mark into a maximum UMS of 160. A minimum of 24 UMS is needed to get a Level 1 pass, and a minimum of a Level 1 pass is required in both the external and the synoptic project to obtain an overall grade. Next, I'd like to talk you through the external assessment regulations. On QualHub, there are 4 different tabs at the top of the page. In the Policies and Documents tab, this is where you'll find the key documents, including the assessment regulations. The regulations in that section are for the internal and external assessments. We are a member of the Joint Council for Qualifications, or JCQ, but for 2021-22, we are only partially aligned to their policies and processes concerning external assessment regulations. For the external assessment, there is a document called the Regulations for the Conduct of External Assessment. This is a set of generic instructions regarding preparing for the external assessment, administering the assessment, and what to do after the assessment has been completed. It also includes information like the safe and secure storage of the assessment papers, the start and end time of the assessments, which can be changed by 30 minutes, and steps needed if you need more time, and the invigilation of the external assessment, what the invigilator should do, and how to position the desks, etc. For 21-22, this document has been closely aligned to the equivalent JCQ Instructions for Conducting Examinations document, but there are still significant differences for some of our qualifications. Therefore, it's best if this document is read by anyone involved with the external assessment, as if there was a concern raised about the conduct of an external assessment, then the quality assurance team would need to investigate. So the more people that are familiar with these regulations, then the smaller the chances are of that happening. Please note that from 2021-22 onwards, it is our intention to fully align with JCQ in this regard, although given the nature and complexity of some of our qualifications, there may be appendices or annexes with additional information that supersede content within the main document. This next document is the Qualification Specific Instructions for Delivery, or QSID, and it gives specific information for the different qualifications unless reasonable adjustments are in place. So for example, if the assessment needs to be invigilated or supervised, if the use of the internet is permitted and so on. For all subject areas in the Level 1/2 Technical Award visa, the same rules apply, and these are that the external assessment paper will be delivered and securely returned to us. There is no online option available. The external assessment lasts an hour and a half and is on a set day and time. The learners don't need internet or computer access to complete the external assessment. And learners need a black or blue pen and a ruler, with pencils and calculators being optional. As the external assessment is on a set date and time, it is important to know where the external assessment timetable is. And when you click on the Delivering Learner Support tab, you will find the external assessment timetable, which includes cut-off dates for registering learners and the date for when the results will be available. The other useful section is the form section, which I'll come on to shortly. You need to have your learners registered before you can book them onto the external assessment. If we look at the external assessment timetable for 21-23, you will see the cut-off date for booking your learners onto the external assessment. If you book your learners on after this date, then late fees will be incurred. Then there is the assessment date and time, and as I mentioned earlier, you can change the start date by 30 minutes, so please do check the regulations. We also have the results release date, which is when you find out how well your learners have done. As already mentioned, this year learners are permitted up to 2 retake opportunities for external assessment, so to support learners further, we've put in place an additional external assessment opportunity in the summer. It is useful to be aware of the forms section, and I'm just going to highlight some of the key forms that you might use. And as I mentioned earlier, if the external assessment regulations aren't followed, then we need to be informed, which can be done via the malpractice or maladministration forms. If you do miss the cut-off dates for registering your learners, then you will need to complete the late entry form. If any of your learners need extra time, a scribe, etc., then the access arrangements and reasonable adjustments form would usually need to be submitted. However, this year, instead of notifying us via a form on our website, from September 2021, centres can complete details of any access arrangements and reasonable adjustments at the point of registration in the NCFE portal. Once the relevant details have been submitted, they will stay with the learner across all qualification registrations and all future external assessment bookings. The request for special consideration is after the assessment has been taken, and it is for when some adverse circumstances could have impacted on the learner's ability to demonstrate their usual level of attainment, so for example, illness or bereavement. And the request for assessment variation is when you need to vary the assessment from, say, for example, the published assessment date, the published assessment time, which would be beyond the 30 minutes that are permitted, or to change or extend the assessment site from your current approved location. Now I'd like to take a closer look at the resources and support that are available to you and your centres. The key area for support will be QualHub. Qualhub.co.uk will be your primary go-to where you can search for all our qualifications and access to specification, assessments, teacher materials, regulations and much more. You can begin by typing your qualification subject area and it will give you a list of suggested qualifications, or you could just type in your qualification code. Using actual assessment material is a good way to make revision effective, and the material that I'm going to show you now is available on QualHub at no extra cost. For every qualification, you will find past or sample exam papers. You will also find the mark schemes, and they will say which assessment objectives are being addressed by each question. Furthermore, the Chief Examiner's Report, which can be found in the Assessment Materials tab on QualHub, does provide an insight on how learners perform nationally on the different questions. So, for example, which questions had strong answers, which were answered incorrectly, and what were the common errors. And it's this that can help inform your future teaching and/or your revision preparation. We also have past and sample projects which can be accessed. Unfortunately, we don't have any sample portfolios performance skills at the moment, We were going to use the 2020 work that was submitted to produce some, but COVID-19 prevented the submission of performance skills portfolios. But hopefully in the future, we will have those available for you to access. Due to the content crossover with the Synoptic project and the external assessment, some of the example portfolios can be used for revision. I'm going to start briefly with revision strategies that are the most effective according to the research. But first, I'd like to launch a quick poll just so you can let me know which you think are the most effective. Okay, we've got all the responses in, so I'm going to close that poll and I'm going to share the results. So as I expected, I did think that there would be a mix of responses. However, I'm quite pleasantly surprised that actually, yes, we've got 50% that think that active recall is one of the most effective and spaced practice. Now, I just want to say at this point that which ones are most effective, but in summary, all of them or a mix of these techniques can be effective as long as you're considering learning styles and stages of revision and so on. John Dunlosky, a professor of psychology at Kent State University, did examine the efficacy of 10 learning strategies from multiple research sources and found that only 2 were shown to be very effective. And as you stated in the previous poll, you are correct in that active recall and spaced or distributed practice were the only ones that were demonstrated to be effective in a wide range of situations. Like I said though, this isn't to say that the other methods aren't effective. It's just that these 2 are the most effective and have the most evidence behind them to support the effectiveness claim. When it comes to tests, exams and quizzes, active recall can involve 2 learners. So for example, reading and revising a piece of text. The first learner decided to reread the text a second time, but learner 2 decides to quiz themselves on what has been read. And as the research did suggest, the second learner who is undertaking active recall will perform better. And at this point as well, it's worth noting that the research also suggested that rereading wasn't an effective strategy. The second strategy that has been demonstrated to be very effective is distributed practice instead of mass practice. Mass practice is when the revision is done in one continuous session with no or little breaks. Spaced or distributed practice is when the sessions are spread out. So for example, if the same length of time is being dedicated to the revision, so let's say 3 hours, by spacing the sessions out, we'll have a much more positive impact on performance over mass practice. Another strategy is highlighting, and this is one revision strategy that is strongly favoured by learners, but actually in practice, it is suggested that it doesn't contribute to higher performance. And in his own words, Professor Dunlosky said that when learners are using a highlighter, they often focus on one concept at a time and are less likely to integrate the information they're reading into a larger whole. However, highlighting can be a good starting point, but it does need to be built upon and active recall added to make it as effective as possible. So not particularly helpful as a revision strategy, but it can certainly be used as a first step towards further study. So now I'm going to show you and explain a few of the strategies and activities that might help boost your learners' external performance. Whilst I talk through the key principles of each strategy or activity, please do make use of the notes and comment section in your participant session handbook to reflect on what strategy or activity you would be interested in trying out and how it could be applied to your daily teaching practice or a key topic or content for revision. One strategy that I used all the time when beginning external assessment preparation and revision with my learners for any external assessment was to get them to rank their own knowledge and understanding of the key topics of the unit. I would provide an overview of the key topic headings from the unit and then the subtopics within that unit. Like this example on the screen on performance roles from Learning Outcome 1. I would then ask them to use a RAG rating or red, amber, green rating or a traffic light system first of all on the subtopics and then provide a RAG rating overall for the main key topic. Then I would ask them to think about an action plan and make a note of some ways that they could improve their own RAG rating. I also included a comment section for them to add anything further, like a date to action by, any additional resources that they may need, and did it work well or not, and if not, why not, and so on. Remember though that learners are often not the best judge of their own revision and how effective it may be or not. But by getting learners to rank their own knowledge of their topics being revised, they deploy the important metacognitive strategy of evaluating their learning. Though they will likely be inaccurate, perhaps even over-optimistic in their judgments of their knowledge and learning, but it still helps the learners better calibrate their revision and monitor their ongoing progress. You could teach your students techniques such as mnemonics or acronyms to help them remember difficult information. This ensures that they are less likely to experience cognitive overload, allowing them to move on to higher level thinking. So you could use expression or word mnemonics such as Roy G. Biv to remember the colours of the rainbow, for example. So red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo and violet. The same thing could be remembered in a mnemonic sentence such as Richard of York gave battle in vain. Now you may have your own mnemonics or acronyms that can help your learners, but you could also ask your learners to create their own, which may be more fun for them to do. Another way of using active recall is the use of flashcards. In this case, I've got a performance skills question on expressive skills, which is on one side and the answer on the other. It would be good to start flashcard production from the beginning of the course. So for example, every week or month or half term, learners are to produce flashcards on what they have learned. They can then use those flashcards as lesson starters and or plenaries every so often. This way, they will have built up a bank of flashcards by the end of the course, and they will have done some distributed practice by using them in the lessons, and it actually takes practically zero teaching planning time to implement. Graphic organisers help us to consciously improve our thinking processes. They assist us in organising our thoughts, create connections, think more deeply, and help us visualise processes and procedures. By using a graphic organiser, we are more effectively thinking about our thinking. Some examples of graphic organisers could include mind maps, flowcharts, or spider diagrams. So for example, a mind map could be created for each of the performance roles, and responsibilities, skills and qualities could be added for each role. A large body of evidence shows that peer explanation benefits student learning. In short, peer teaching or explanation occurs when learners by design teach or explain key concepts or topics to other learners. Peer teaching is one of the best ways to master a particular subject. It is a method of teaching where a learner instructs another learner, wherein the former will be an expert and the latter a novice. The learner-teacher can pose a challenging question to learners. Learners answer the question individually, and then learners work with a partner in the class to discuss their answers, and then finally the learners answer the question again. Through the direct interaction between learners, peer teaching promotes active learning as well as participation within themselves. There is a saying that to teach is to learn twice, and this method paves the teacher-learner to also revise the topic again. Learner-teachers enhance their own depth of knowledge in the topic by instructing others. And as an example, the first step would be teaching and demonstrating as normal. You could then pair up the learners as you see fit, so for example, similar or opposite ability, fixed and growth mindset, male and female, etc. You could have then two sets of model answers so that each learner in the pair gets a different set. Learners could then study their model answer, let's say for 5 minutes, and then the learners then explain the model answer they have and justify why the answer is correct. Alternatively, you could prepare model answers yourself that contain errors or missing information, and that the learners then have to explain what else is needed. And at this point, then you can give the learners their own problem or question to work on. And lastly, a variation of peer instruction is note-taking pairs. To engage learners in note-taking pairs, you periodically interrupt the class to ask learners to compare their notes with those of a classmate. Next, you would encourage learners to talk about both the content and the format of their notes. Finally, you could ask for volunteers to show and possibly even discuss the merits of note-taking approaches. The minute test is a technique that I have used for the assessment objective 1 recall type questions, where I would give my learners a set of questions for homework, so 10 questions for example, like the ones on the screen. I would then tell them that the next lesson there was going to be a quick starter quiz of just 5 of the questions, and that those 5 questions were on the homework sheet. I'd then display the questions on the board and the learner would answer them in their books with peer or self-assessment. You could then also get the learners to design and create their own quizzes to share amongst the class. This could be done on paper, or you could use a free online tool such as Quizlet or Hot Potatoes. It could also be useful to use the just a minute strategy, and this takes the classic radio game and adapts it to almost any topic, test or examination, revision term. And put simply, learners have to talk for a minute on a given topic where there are no pauses and no hesitations allowed. Slips or repetitions or even micro pauses make them lose a life, and therefore 3 strikes and you're out. This strategy harnesses the self-explanation effect and can also be really fun and engaging for the learners. In short, if you can elaborate on a topic and explain it well, you have retrieved it from memory, which is also a good revision strategy, as well as lightly consolidating it too. Another strategy that I have used and that can be used includes a 6x6 grid, and it's referred to as on a roll. In each square, you can write a question or get learners to produce one of their own. Then a learner rolls the dice to get 2 numbers, a number of the row and a number for the column, and then the learners have to answer that question. Alternatively, you could have keywords on each square and learners have to come up with a definition or a question for that word. Or they roll in order to have 2 words and that they need to link them together, building in some self-explanation, as mentioned previously, as a promising technique. And with this activity on a roll, there are a wide range of options that are available on adapting this activity to suit the needs of your learners. Now, I highly recommend the use of past papers for revision with your learners, and it is an effective recall method. They help learners to become familiar with the structure of a paper and the language that they use. Learners will probably already be used to the vocabulary from learning in the classroom, but it's good to get themselves familiarised with past papers so they know how everything is laid out on the external assessment date. We would hope that they are less stressed. In some external assessments, some extra information might be printed in the paper, such as equations, for example, for the sciences and mathematics papers. Again, it's good to know where these will be in the paper. Once you've done a couple of past papers, you know the layout of the questions. Generally, the paper will start with the lower mark questions and work up. But it's good to know that so you don't write an essay long answer for a 2-mark question and not have enough time for the higher mark questions later in the paper. It's best for learners to practice completing the paper under external assessment conditions. The benefits of completing the paper in this way is that they can work out how much time they will have for each question. Past papers can also be completed at home in a quiet space, and they could ask a parent, sibling or friend to act as an invigilator and tell them how much time they have left. From our website, Qual Hub, you can also download a mark scheme and the Chief Examiner's report for each past paper. This way, you or the learner can mark the work and see where the marks would lie and what grade they would get. Learners will also understand the different types of questions that are required and can use this to structure their answers. Using the mark scheme, learners can refine their answering skills and ultimately save time in the external assessment. Furthermore, if learners' revision notes are all in bullet points, then completing past papers is a good way to practice putting that information that they have learned into paragraphs, because being able to communicate their knowledge clearly is just as important as knowing the knowledge itself. Once the paper has been completed, it will need to be marked. Learners can also mark their own work using the mark scheme and then analyse their own results, or they can ask a classmate to do this for them. Teaching your learners to carefully analyse the breakdown of an external assessment question is a vital skill. I had my learners underline, circle or highlight the context or scenario of the question to ensure that they are referring to this setting. So in this question, it is about a professional musician who has been offered a record deal. They would also highlight the key ask of the question. So what content or knowledge do they need to demonstrate? So in this question, the benefits and drawbacks of contractual agreements, and the command words to ensure that they are fully answering the question. And in this question, it would be evaluating the advantages and disadvantages, including the benefits versus the drawbacks of record label management and financial considerations. Finally, having your learners write key notes around the question to remind them what they need to include before fully organising their thoughts on the page. External assessment wrappers are worksheets containing reflective questions that help learners to think about their performance in a test or external assessment. You could give them to your learners both before and after they receive their results and feedback. The worksheets can be given out before they receive feedback, and you should ask them to think about how they're prepared for the external assessment. So, for example, what revision study strategies they use. Those given out after the feedback should make the learner reflect on the mistakes they made and how they could prepare differently to ensure greater success in the future, making them more strategic learners. Wrappers work because they are time efficient. Learners are doing this task anyway. It only adds a few minutes to a task. Metacognition practice is built into the task that they're doing, and learners are more self-monitoring in context. Feedback on accuracy can be built in, and feedback is immediate. Also, support can gradually be faded out, and it's been shown that in just 3 lessons, most learners are successful on their own. And lastly, it just goes to show that some minor interventions can significantly change behaviour. And as a side note, you can also adapt this method and use this for an assignment wrapper for the synoptic project. David Newland in 2013 said that exemplars can provide information, skills, content and messages in a way that no other teaching methodology can. Exemplars are a very useful way in which students can be helped to gain a firm understanding in a contextual and non-threatening fashion of exactly what is required of them in order to succeed to their desired level of achievement. There are many different types of feedback that teachers can provide to their students, and a common one being model answers or exemplars. A model answer is an ideal response to a question. It is an example of what would receive full marks and helps teachers demonstrate to students how to include the key elements of a topic into an answer. Model answers are typically used so that students can compare their own work to them and assess their strengths and areas for development. This means that teachers don't have to provide individual feedback. But of course, model answers can definitely be helpful when also coupled with personal feedback from the teacher. They can also act as a useful reference point for students when they are writing assignments demonstrating the ideal layout, format and content, and can help students with their structure. However, specific comments tailored to a student's work will guide them to make the necessary changes to succeed in the future. Students may also find it easier to revise from model answers. So if students are struggling when it comes to external assessment preparation, model feedback can be a particularly useful revision resource. This further indicates that combining the strengths of both types of feedback is an effective way to make the most of students' learning process. It may also be worth noting that model answers are particularly useful in terms of understanding the expectations of command words versus response structure. For performance skills, although NCFE are unable to offer any model answers at this time, you could use teacher or learner model answers or learner work that has been assessed and graded at different levels. Like I've just explained on the previous slide, sample learner work is another example of active recall, and it can also include higher order thinking skills with learners evaluating and justifying their decisions. You could get learners to analyse a section of the task or as a whole and get them to decide what is good, what needs improvement, maybe even what grade they would give it, and add or improve to that model answer. Learners could then swap their evaluations with each other, they could compare them and then discuss them. It is also worth remembering that not only does assessed written portfolio work feed into understanding, but also formative work and practical, for example, a question about the practicalities of rehearsal, would be informed by both the learner's taught knowledge, but also the knowledge gained through practical experience of rehearsals used to deliver the knowledge in context. Another simple method or technique that I have used is called an interpretation grid or a quadrant grid. It is quick, easy, and applicable to almost any lesson, topic, or content. All you need is a simple 4-square grid, perhaps an image, and a list of questions or prompts to help lead your discussion from level 1, which is knowledge, to level 6, which is evaluation. So how does it work? You begin with a 4-square grid. You can draw one on the board or create an electronic document, or even get your learners to create their own. You can use the 4-quadrant approach to the extended response questions as well. You could place the extended response question in the center, like this one on the screen, which is about a dancer changing her role to a choreographer, and the 4 boxes are the key aspects that need to be included in that question. In terms of the subject-specific information, the knowledge and the context, learners can explore knowledge of the specific activities for a dancer and a choreographer. Also, the advantages and disadvantages of taking on a new role. The 3rd and 4th quadrants could look at the evaluation of the benefits to her career and the personal benefits, and then provide a conclusive commentary. Not all students will have an answer for each of the levels or quadrants, but participating in the class discussion will encourage students to process their thinking at a higher level. If you use the same technique frequently, you will also begin to notice which students are using HOTS and which ones could use a little scaffolding to get them there. A rubric is a performance-based assessment tool. Teachers often use rubrics to gather data about their learners' progress on a particular assignment or skill. Simple rubrics allows learners to understand what is required in an assignment, how it will be graded, and how well they are progressing towards proficiency. Rubrics can be both formative and summative assessment tools for evaluating written work, projects, oral presentation, or any other class assignments or activities. To help learners address these types of questions, then you can produce checklists for learners to use. This could also help if you have learners peer or self-assessing. And as the same generic statements are present on the mark scheme for the different assessment objectives, you can use them and make them more learner-friendly. You can include sections after each statement for comments to be included if this is needed. So I'm now going to finish off by looking at some of the technological tools that you might find useful for revision with your learners. During the course of lockdown and home learning, many of you, I'm sure, have become more familiar with Google Docs and Google Forms. So I'm briefly going to go through one way of using it to create quizzes or even homework activities. When you start a new form, you can choose what type it is, from multiple choice, checkbox, drop-down menu, and more. If you click on the Settings tab, you can choose to make it a quiz, whether they see their result immediately or later, or whether they can see the correct answer, and so on. One option for performance skills is to use the 1 or 2 mark questions from the sample and past papers that we have available on QualHub, or you could just create your own questions. You then copy it into the form and select the correct answer. And as we know that feedback is vital for learner achievement, you can add feedback to the quiz. This will allow you to add feedback for incorrect answers as well as the correct answer. Padlet.com is best described as an online bullet board. You can choose from many different layouts, and the layout of the shelf could be useful if you want to put images, links, videos, and much more into different categories or headings. With a free account, you can make up to 3 Padlets. In performance skills, you could set up a starter task for learners to list all the national organisations related to employment in the performance industry, and then use this as a basis for further discussion and question and answer. You could also use the Padlet for the upload of ongoing learner work, allowing for collaboration and feedback. Learners can also have discussions on there, or you could get them to include links to their Google Form quizzes that you had them make, or you can just ask the learners to make their own Padlet and share it with you. Edpuzzle is a website that allows you to add content to online videos. You can search and add content to videos from YouTube, Khan Academy, TED Talks, or a video that another teacher has created. If you use Google Classroom, you can link your class to Edpuzzle. You can also search for a range of different videos on whatever topic you would like. And there are some that are already for you to use that are available too that have been created by other teachers, such as these ones on dance performance videos. You can add multiple choice questions to certain parts of the video, or you can add open-ended questions or use it as an option for discussion boxes to elicit the learner's current thinking. Or you could add voiceovers or post-it notes to sections of these videos. You can also edit the videos by cutting or trimming certain parts of the video. When you have finished with your editing, you can then assign it to your learners, and you can even prevent learners from skipping through parts of the video. This way that you can assure that they have had to watch the full video. You can also check their progress in real time while they learn at their own pace. Please do note though that initially this may be quite time consuming to create and set up the videos, but once you do have them, they will be available for future use. Flipgrid is a free social video discussion platform. It's simple and it makes learning fun. If you're using Google Classroom, you can now sync up to 500 learners from your classroom list with Flipgrid to grant your learners direct access to the Flipgrid discussions, where there is no email domains or usernames required. On this website, you could post your discussion topic and you can include specific details. You can add links to other websites, include videos and links to forms, etc. You can then share the discussion topic with your learners by either having your classes set up, or you can make the discussion topic public, where a join code will be required to access it. Learners would then reply with a video, and there are other host of options on the website available, just like there are with things like Instagram and TikTok to make it more exciting. You can then provide feedback to the learners either by a video yourself or via a text comment, and you can include grading criteria as well, such as Rubrics. You can also search for some pre-made topics as well as getting some ideas of things that you could do, or you could just use the ready-made ones and assign them to your learners. It also might be worth remembering at this point that the advisory age limit for these social platforms is 13. The website Mentimeter.com is an interactive and online presentation software program, and it's free, but there are some limitations with the free version. Mentimeter can be used in real-time classwork and live remote lessons. The interactive element allows questions to be submitted, quizzes to be taken, and much more. You can make an unlimited number of presentations, but in a single presentation, there is a maximum of 2 questions and a maximum of 5 quizzes per presentation. The questions can be submitted anonymously, and there is a profanity filter too. Microsoft has an add-in that allows you to insert Mentimeter slides into your presentation. Mentimeter can be used for external assessment revision and quick recap or review quizzes, or even have a quiz ready for the learners to complete as an entry or a starter activity. Kahoot is a game-based learning platform, and that makes it easy to create, share and play learning games or trivia quizzes in minutes in classrooms and at home. You can create a fun learning game in minutes, and these are called Kahoots. The format and number of questions is up to you. As with the others, you can add videos, images and diagrams to your questions to increase engagement. Kahoots are best played in a group setting, and to join a game, you need a unique pin. If you're the game host, i.e. the teacher, it's best to use a big screen. Players, i.e. the learners, answer the questions on their own devices, such as their mobile phones, while questions are being displayed on a shared screen. In addition to live games, you can also send Kahoot challenges that players complete at their own pace. So for example, for homework or remote learning, After a game, you could encourage players to create and share their own Kahoots as part of their revision plan and preparation. Instructions on how to create Kahoots on your computer or in the app, as well as playing a live Kahoot, are available on their website. Quizlet is another good revision tool and includes digital flashcards, matching games, practice electronic assessment, and live quizzes that are similar to Kahoot, as well as the new expert explanations. There are study sets created by teachers, lecturers, and other learners, or you can easily create your own. Learners can revise at home, school, or on the go with the mobile app and can choose which of Quizlet's 7 different study modes works best with their style of learning. But it can also be used for whole class participation. Quizlet also tracks progress and provides instant feedback about where the learners should focus. Hot Potatoes is another online tool, and this enables you to create interactive multiple choice, short answer, jumbled sentence, crossword, matching and ordering, and gap fill exercises. So, as we've come to the end of this webinar, I would just like to do another quick poll on how confident you're feeling now with the preparation and revision for the external assessment. And with the first poll, number 1 being not a little confidence and 10 being very confident. Okay, so all the votes in, I'm going to close that poll and I will share the results. And I think it's very pleasing to see that we do have 50% of the attendees between 9 and 10. And I guess upon closer analysis from the first poll, I hope that that's improved if your score was a little bit lower at the beginning. And those that are at 5 to 6, again, I hope that's been an improvement and that you are feeling more knowledgeable and confident. So I think it's a really good time then at this point just to say thank you for your time today, and I do hope that you found it useful. As mentioned earlier, if you have asked any questions via the question box, I think we've got a bit of time to try and respond to them as part of this webinar. Also, please do feel free to add any strategies that you use and that you find effective that I've not mentioned today. If you do have any further questions once the webinar is finished, then please do feel free to get in touch with me directly using my email, kellyjohnson@ncfe.org.uk. If I'm unavailable, our general email is provider.development@ncfe.org.uk. And please do visit ncfe.org.uk/vCerts for more information on all our vCert technical awards. Lastly, as I mentioned throughout the webinar, I have included some of the useful references here for you to refer to if you require further information and support. At this point, if you don't have any questions, please do feel free to leave the webinar. And as you do, I really would appreciate it if you could complete the short evaluation that will pop up to help improve the service and support that we offer. Again, thanks everyone for attending and your time today. And on behalf of everyone here at NCFE, we wish you a safe and successful year.